host, John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. We're coming to you a little later tonight. We were supposed to start the show about a half hour ago, but we've had some technical difficulties. So we hope we've resolved them enough to talk some football with you. And in order to do that, I need to bring in my co-host, Kevin Stone. Kevin, how are you this evening?
Good, man. How are you?
Busy between football and lacrosse for you, and we launched Boston Baseball Journal this week. I was at the Franklin KP game today. A lot going on, so we're entering this whole new world with baseball. But football is still king for us, and we're going to get to talk about some football tonight, specifically the owners' meetings in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I want to start there. Obviously, the owners' meetings are the next couple of days. It started today. They will continue tomorrow. Owner Robert Kraft met with the media today. Eliot Wolf did the circuit. He went around and met with various media outlets. Mike Vrabel is scheduled to meet with the media tomorrow. AFC coaches are meeting tomorrow. NFC coaches met with the media today. You delve into what Robert Kraft had to say. He had a lot to say. You transcribed it. You talked about it today on anyfootballjournal.com. What were some of the things that he had to say?
So I'm just trying to pull up some bullet points here. He was asked about the new training facility, and there's a few things that I thought stood out today. One of them is that because he seemed, I don't want to say annoyed, but they clearly hear the chatter, and how can you not from those report cards? But Robert Kraft said, I'm looking forward to the media seeing it and getting your expertise, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. But there was a hint of sarcasm in there. So they clearly hear the noise, as they should. That's 2 or 3 years running now that those report cards have not been good for facilities. He was asked about Christian Gonzalez contract negotiations. Immediately said, we have a salary cap. That's not good if you're a Patriots fan, because I think you're on the verge here of, I shouldn't say on the verge, you still have a while to go before this really sort of becomes an issue, but
well, he did also say, in fairness, though, he did also say he wants to get extensions done with him in May. So
no, that's fair. But when you open up with that, you're asking the fan base to already sort of kind of think, well, this is not going to go down a good path. And we talked about it a few weeks ago. And as you know, I talked about it with Jim Murray and Chris Gasper on 98.5. That's not a guy you want to mess around with. I don't think that contract extension, for a number of reasons. One, he's really good. And two, mostly, it just sends a bad message to the locker room, I think, in terms of not taking care of one of your own, especially after how he...
But let me ask you this, and I talked about this yesterday on Patriots Pulse with John Sapichetti. I don't think they need to get it done right now. Why is there this rush to get it done right now? I don't understand that.
So I don't think there is, but I do think you're right. I
mean, his argument is that the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost you, which I understand.
Sure.
But at the same time, I just don't understand why they need to get it done right now. They do need to figure out his fifth-year option, which they're going to have to pick up by May.
Right.
Obviously, they're going to pick that up. You have the remainder of this offseason to negotiate in good faith into the summer, ideally. If you don't get anything done, he comes back. Now you have another year, in theory, where you could get something done. And I asked Sap this question, and I'll ask you, what corners are coming up now in terms of elite-level cornerbacks and are going to reset the market? It's him. If anybody's going to reset the market, it's Gonzalez. The question you have to ask yourself if you're the Patriots is, do you want him to reset the market? Are you willing to pay him to reset the market? And I think that's a very fair question. We've seen what the going rate is for trading a cornerback. The Jets got 2 once for Sauce Gardner. The Chiefs got 2 once for Trent McDuffie. We know what the going rate is now to acquire an elite level corner. And I'm all in on keeping him and paying him. I'm not exactly a fan of resetting the market with him, but he deserves to get paid for what he did, especially in the Super Bowl where he shut down Jackson Smith and Jigba, who, by the way, got paid last week. But all that being said, I don't understand why they have to get it done right now, or else. Why?
No, so look, I agree with you on everything that you just said between the contract and being okay with paying him, but not necessarily wanting to set the market. I agree with everything. I think I don't have an answer. If I had to guess, I'd say it's just because you always hear, well, it's better to be early on this. And Kraft said that today. He said, usually financially, it's more satisfactory, is I think the term he used. I think fans are just more so worried about pissing the guy off and then him not playing ball with the Patriots, which is very possible. The only reason you got guys to play ball for so many years is because Tom Brady played ball, and God just sort of followed that lead.
Those days are over. That's
God,
not going to happen. And for what it's worth,
Sure.
let's not forget, Bill Belichick did reset the market with Stephon Gilmore
Yeah.
when he signed him. So it's not like the Patriots haven't gone down this road before.
No, 100%. And I see the comment here from Ken. Look, this. I've been talking about having to start thinking about Drake for a while now. And Kraft did say, look, we hope both guys are, and he said we believe both guys will be with us long term. I didn't love that he passed the buck off to Vrabel and Wolf, though. He said, that's their decision. Well, you control the money, dude. Like, it's kind of an easy way to, I don't want to call it a cop-out, but it's kind of a cop-out. Just before we get too far down the line, a couple other things that stood out. One, the expectations for this year. He said it's always to make the playoffs, which I agree with. You shouldn't be taking a step back. If anything, they should be, expecting to reach an AFC championship, I think. But the schedule is tougher. And then he brought up the 18-game schedule, too. Talked about the preseason games really not being a revenue source anymore. And they brought up player safety. I still don't buy it. It's just another way for them to make money, but it sounds like it's going to happen no matter what. So the only other problem I had with what he said today in regards to that is this push for the international stuff. Like, why are we still doing this? I don't care.
Oh, it's only going to get worse.
It's so bad.
That's not going away. If your dream is for that to go away, you might as well wake up. It's not happening.
No, it sucks, too, because
I think, for what it's worth, he's a mouthpiece for the league. He's a mouthpiece
100%.
for the owners.
Yeah,
the owners want this. They want the two international. They want they want every team to play an international game. That is not just a Robert Kraft desire. That is the owner's desire. He's just a prominent owner, and he's a mouthpiece for them.
Yeah, no, and he brought up the 2-bye thing today, which, that helps. But again, it's the whole, there's no such thing as too greedy for them. I know that the NFL is always going to be king. They have everybody over a barrel. Everybody plans their fall Sundays around the NFL. But man,
they're kicking off next season on a Wednesday night, which is another thing.
It sucks.
That they're trying to be on television as much as possible. And I'm telling you now, and I said this to someone recently, do not be surprised if there comes a day where they're pretty much on every day. Yeah. Right now, it's Thursday, it's Saturday, it's Thursday, it's Friday, depending on what time of the season it is.
Yeah.
It's Saturday, depending on what time of the season it is. Obviously, it's Sunday and it's Monday night. The only days that there isn't football on during the course of the season are Tuesday and Wednesday nights. And them saying, well, we're going to play that season opener on Wednesday night, and then masking it by saying, well, the reason we're going to do that is because we're doing 49ers, Rams in Australia on Thursday night. I call bullshit there. This is what this league does. They are gluttonous. Mm-hmm. These owners are gluttonous. They can't have enough money. They can't have a big enough TV deal. They're going to do everything they can to cram this league down your throat. Every team's going to play an international game. You're eventually going to get the 18-game schedule. I think the players are going to push back, but I think ultimately it's going to be beneficial enough for them that they're going to do it. You're going to get the 2 byes. All of this is happening. This league can do whatever the hell they want. To your point, they have the American public over a barrel. And quite frankly, we're heading in a direction where they're going to have the rest of the world over a barrel, because look around, man. In Brazil, of all places, the NFL is the second most popular sport behind soccer. It's only going to increase in popularity around the world. It's a better product than the NBA. It's a better product than the NHL. It's a better product than Major League Baseball. They know it, and they're selling it, and they're going to continue to sell it. So this idea of the international games going away, you might as well forget about that. It's never going to happen, never mind in your lifetime.
No, and again, I'm usually a fan of it. At least, again, when we're not on the road with the Patriots and they're not at home, obviously, waking up for those 9 o'clock games, I'm a fan. But now it's just listening to Kraft today, for whatever reason, it was really the first time it hit me. They're like, man, it is way too much. And I don't know why it just hit me today, but it did.
Well, and I think, listen, let's be honest. The 18-game season, I think, has been something that they've wanted for a long
Yeah,
time.
for a while.
Big
Yeah.
reason for it is because they want to time it with President's Day so people can have the next day off. Okay. And it's smart and it makes sense. Next year, it's going to fall on Valentine's Day. President's Day is the next day. So it does make sense. But again, I go back to what I've said all along, which is this league, all of these leagues for that matter, but this league is all about making money and putting money in the coffers of the owners. And I think at the end of the day, that's all they care about is how can they make money. And they're going to come up with as many different ways as they can to make money. And this is another example of that. You did mention Ken Mattias' question, Drake May, Gonzo need extensions in the near future for sure. They're not doing Drake May this offseason.
No, that's still a ways away.
I don't even know why that's even a topic of conversation. Next offseason, yes. This offseason, it's not going to happen. If anybody gets extended this offseason, obviously it'll be Gonzalez. Rock checks in. Thanks for checking in, man. Wasn't Seymour highest paid defensive player in his first contract after rookie deal? Yes, he was. Well, and again, I'm not saying the Patriots have set the market before. They're willing to do it again. Me personally, I question whether or not it's worth doing that. I think you can make him the highest paid corner in the league without overpaying him in order to set the market, which is what he and his agent are going to want.
I agree. And now that just sort of jarred my memory. The Bledsoe contract, didn't that set the market too? I believe.
Yeah. So, when he signed it, he was the highest quarterback. He was the highest paid quarterback of all time.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, to your point, they've done it. Now, granted, that's a quarterback position. I know it's different, but
no, they've done it at multiple positions.
Yeah.
Like Rock just said, they did it with Seymour. They did it with Stephon Gilmore when they signed him. I'm not saying, again, I don't want to beat the dead horse here. I'm not saying that they're not willing to do that. The question is, they're going to have to look at Christian Gonzalez and say, is he worth a 4-year, $135 million extension? They have to ask themselves that with over $100 million guaranteed. If they think he's worth it, they'll get it done relatively quickly. If they think he's worth it, but they don't want to go there, they'll haggle, they'll negotiate, and they'll try to come up with a number that works for both sides. But at the end of the day, I'm the one that's saying I'm not sure I want them to be setting the market with Christian Gonzalez when potentially in a year and a half from now, you may be setting the market with Drake May. And it's a pretty scary proposition because now you're talking 60, 65 million a year.
So look, and it's been talked about, it'll be talked about for the next, 3 weeks until the draft. I don't mind them trading him for 2 first rounders. If you are going to get that. No, I don't think it's going to happen.
Oh, Gonzalez?
Yeah.
That's not happening.
No, so
not right now. I think they're going to make every effort to re-sign him. I think if they come to an impasse and there's no movement there, then yes, I think that they're going to probably trade him. But I think they're going to do everything they can to keep him. I think they genuinely want to keep him.
No, I agree. I'm just saying at this point, if you can tell that this is going to get ugly and he's not going to play ball just because you waited, which is perfectly in there, right? Then you have to start seriously considering it, and I would.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And again, that process could begin as early as this summer. If they don't get anything done between now and training camp, who's to say it doesn't hold out?
Well, I was just going to say, we might not see him at training camp.
Correct. At least at the very beginning, he may opt to hold out, so who knows? So this has many layers to it. And again, I think a fair number for both sides gets it done pretty early, but everybody made a big deal out of him being at the Celtics game last week and doing the money sign. Well, he wants to get paid. Jackson Smith and Jigba got paid last week. He's making over $40 million a year. He's probably looking at that and saying, well, I shut that dude out in the Super Bowl. He was negligible. I should be getting $35 million a year. I know I'm not a receiver, so I'm not going to get his kind of money, but I should be the highest paid cornerback of all time. And again, he would have a valid argument. But if you're the Patriots, you do maintain some leverage here because who's coming up in the next 2 years? It's an elite level corner that needs to get paid. It's going to be him or a potential Patrick Surtain extension in Denver. But I don't see the Patriots rushing this. If they could get it done this offseason, they will. If they can't, obviously they won't, and they'll expect him to play on his current deal and take it into next offseason. Now, of course, Robert Kraft wasn't the only one that spoke today. Eliot Wolf, as I mentioned earlier, also did the media rounds. He joined Kay Adams. A couple of the things that he said on Kay Adams' show that I thought were pretty interesting. One, he didn't completely close the door on Stephon Diggs. And two, when he was asked about A.J. Brown, he said, well, A.J. Brown's on another team, acknowledged that they've had a conversation, but wouldn't go into anything else in regards to Brown and his potential status. I think the Stephon Diggs comment is interesting. And I've come around to the notion that that door may not be closed. That door may not be closed.
So
he may potentially return.
So I'm not with you there yet. I actually think they're doing him a favor the more I thought about it, and just sort of making it seem like, we might still be interested if other teams aren't. You know what I mean? I think that's part of it too. Don't get me wrong. I do think there's probably a chance that door remains open through OTAs. Like, what he is. You don't need him in here early on or anything like that. So, it's always a possibility, but I genuinely think they're just doing him a favor. I've never been more confident about the AJ Brown thing. Frankly, I think it's the ultimate lying season between him and Howie Roseman right now. I really do. And I'm trying to think about the third thing you mentioned was.
Well, I think the thing, though, in my opinion, with AJ Brown, it's going to come down to one thing. If Howie Roseman is looking at that Jalen Waddle trade from last week and saying, okay, that's the benchmark for us, then the Patriots are going to have to give up a first-round pick. If they're not willing to get a first-round pick, he's not coming here. And as I've said all along, and I said this a couple of weeks ago on Patriots Pulse, I am convinced that there are going to be other teams in it. I think the Chiefs are going to be in on him. I think the Houston Texans are going to be in on him. I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to be in on him. And as long as it's an AFC team, I think Howie Roseman is going to be willing to negotiate with anybody that gives him what he wants. Because here's the thing. I don't think A.J. Brown, if he doesn't get traded, I don't think A.J. Brown holds out. I still think he shows up for camp. I still think he ends up a Philadelphia Eagle. So if you're the Eagles, you're in a really, really good spot here because you can trade him and get the return you want, or he comes back, in which case you hope that Nick Sirianni and him can mend fences, Jalen Hurts and him can mend fences, and you move on and get back to being a Super Bowl contender. I mean, I think the Philadelphia Eagles, in a lot of ways, are in a win-win situation here.
I agree. And if nothing else, you're going to learn a lot about Vrabel and Cowden and Eliot Wolf here and how they kind of go about this. Can they get it done? Can they navigate the weird trade waters? And look, we gave Eliot Wolf credit last year when a lot of people wouldn't. He could have traded that pick, and he didn't. So deserves credit for that. Same thing with the Drake May pick. Could have traded it and didn't. So now what? Like, you just went to a Super Bowl. You're on the cusp. Can you figure this out? That's what I'm most fascinated about with all of this is, and I do still think that ultimately A.J. Brown gets traded, but I'm with you. I do think there's going to be more teams interested than people think.
A lot more. Right. Yeah. They're not interested right now because of Philadelphia's unwillingness to trade him right now. After June 1st, where it's about $20 million less in terms of a cap hit on them, they're going to be way more willing to trade him. But again, I don't think they're going to give him away. They're going to get what they want ultimately. I don't think it should come from the Patriots. I would not give up a first-round pick for him. I've been on record as saying it. Would I entertain a second-round pick? Sure, I'll have the conversation. A second and a fourth, that might get it done in my eyes. But I'm not, especially in next year's draft, which I feel like we say this every year, is going to be better than this year's draft. I think it's going to be deeper, specifically at the offensive skill positions, specifically a quarterback and receiver. If that's the case, then those picks have a lot of value next year. And Philadelphia knows that. Philadelphia's in a great spot because the way they look at it is, okay, if we trade him, we lose him on the field this year, but we get that extra first-round pick in that highly touted 27 class. That could pay dividends long term. Ken says if this team can't come to an agreement on Gonzalez before the season, that's ridiculous. Pay the man after his Super Bowl performance. I disagree, man. I disagree again. I don't understand why it needs to get done right now. I don't get it. I don't agree with it.
No, I'm with you there. I think just people, it's partially our fault in the media because we start talking about it so early. people think it has to get done right away.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. In other news, the Patriots have been doing the pro day circuit. Of course, they were at Boston College last Monday. We were there for that. Mike Vrabel was at Arizona State on Friday. The video is circulating all over the place of him working with Arizona State offensive tackle Max Ihinashore. A lot of people are speculating that Ihinashore is going to be their pick. It probably is around his sweet spot. I think he probably goes anywhere from 28 to 40 in this draft. Patriots could potentially take him at 31. It's kind of become a rite of passage, if you will, with Vrabel and working out guys with the chest pad and everything else. And I know people get all lathered up about that. But I think him taking the time to work with Ihinashore tells me that they do like him, that he is in the mix for them to potentially take him at 31. And it's a reminder that as much as we think edge is their number one need and they're going to go full bore at taking an edge rusher at 31, I don't think it's a fait accompli. In fact, as I've said for the past week, we're hearing different things. We're hearing that they're not as enamored with this group because there's some guys that while they like them on tape, their length is a concern. I've said this to you last week. I'm going to echo that sentiment again this week. I'm not convinced that they go edge at 31. I think that there's a multitude of options available to them with that pick.
I was gonna say they could do so many different things that first night. I didn't be joke about it. It could be a really short night at Gillette for us or a really long one. Because being in that 31 spot, you keep hearing they might trade up and take away offensive linemen. And in that case, we know what they're doing very early on. Or, you sit there and wait and they end up trading out of the first round and people will lose their minds if they do that, I think. But the fan base always kind of loses their minds when they trade out of the first round. I did it for years. But I'm starting to lean offensive lineman again. I was sort of in that category the whole time until you saw what happened against Seattle and edge seemed like the play. But look, you have an MVP candidate now. You've got to keep him upright. You can't afford to.
But I understand that, and that should be the goal long term. But I think the thing to keep in mind here is Morgan Moses is going to be your starting right tackle. I would be shocked if they moved off of him at any point this offseason. Again, he's relatively cheap at $8 million a year. So even if you drafted a Ihinashore or a Monroe Freeling, or Fano, one of those guys, I still think you're playing Morgan Moses over them at right tackle. Maybe Morgan Moses doesn't see year 3 of that deal, but I do think he's your starting right tackle in 2026. Listen, if they believe in their minds that the best value in that spot is one of those tackles, go ahead and take them. I mean, you always draft ahead anyway. You always draft for the future. But I think that edge is such a priority for them, and I think they're going to prioritize it pretty early on in this draft, that I still think there's a good chance that that's where they go at 31. Now, there's also the possibility if there's a player there they like in the 25, 26, 27 range, they trade up. And as always, and I know that Patriot fans scoff at this, there's always a possibility they trade out of the first round, which I think is a legitimate possibility this year because the difference between a player at 31 and a player, let's say, at 37, 38, that gap is not that wide.
No, and again, I just keep going back to what it looked like against Seattle. Like, yeah, you need edge pressure. I get it. But you also, and we talked about this earlier, you don't have a Drake May contract issue yet, but you're doing 2 years. So something is just in my head about, making sure he's as happy as possible. But again, ask me in a week, I'll probably change my mind. You've kind of taught me this over the last 5 years. The whole beauty is in the eye of the beholder thing with the draft is so true. Like it really depends. You go day to day. Like they could change their mind literally within an hour of the pick. You know what I mean? So there's so much more back and forth to go over these next 3 weeks anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I think that's the thing, right? And again, they could throw us a curveball and go in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
Right. There isn't a tight end there that you take at 31 unless they pulled a Cole Strange and took a guy, like a Max Clare from Ohio State way before they should have. There's a good chance Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon, is probably going to be gone by then. But even if he is still there, I I think you have more needs. And I will say, I think that Vrabel, Cowden, Wolf, I think this triumvirate is more focused on addressing needs and less focused on taking the best player or the best RAS guy. That needs matter to them, and they want to address needs. And I think they're going to do that here. Now, if there's a player, I mentioned Kenyon Sadiq, if there's a player sitting there that you didn't think would be sitting there, then man, you're hard pressed to potentially pass on him. But I think edge is on the table. I think offensive tackles on the table. I think wide receivers on the table. They could go in a myriad of directions with that pick. They could also potentially move up or trade down. I think if they traded the pick, the more likely scenario is they trade down. But again, TBD, we shall see. As I mentioned earlier, Mike Vrabel is meeting with the media tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. I mean, what do you think are some of the topics he's going to touch on?
So I think that's happening tomorrow. I saw Mike Reese tweet the other day. I could be wrong though. Look, we just heard from him. What was it, 3 weeks ago or something like that? So, I mean, I don't expect anything earth shattering. I know he did an interview with Patriots.com. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but again, this time of year, A, it's lying season. So no matter what he says, you have to take it with a grain of salt. And B, again, this close to the draft, I think we're going to hear from Eliot Wolf for his pre-draft press conference next week, if I'm not mistaken. So that one will probably be sort of a little bit more telling. If you remember last year, there was sort of some hints that they were dropping about what they might do during that day. I think you were at that one with me, but I don't expect anything major tomorrow if he does talk. Again, I keep going back to it's lying season. No matter what he says, you're not going to get much, I don't think.
No, especially when it comes to the draft. I mean, you're less than 3 weeks away. I don't think we're going to get a lot out of him in that regard. Anyway, you are watching / listening to the New England Football Show. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. And Kevin, I'm going to pivot here now and talk some college football. Of course, you've been ensconced over at Boston College here for the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that I think has been really impressive, especially the last couple of practices, is the amount of recruits that have been in the building. You mentioned today, I believe there was over 60 recruits that were there. I mean, this coaching staff is doing their due diligence, as is every staff. We're not saying it simply because it's Boston College, but they really, truly are doing their due diligence in regards to getting as many of those guys in the building and getting them in front of their players and having them see how they practice and prepare.
So it's funny. The schedule is different this week. They usually go Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, but with the Easter holiday, obviously Sunday, it's Monday, Wednesday this week. This was the most packed that a weekday practice has been. And you know, Saturdays are always the big day. Those are the scrimmage days. You have, 50, 60, sometimes 100 recruits on hand. But this one today was, I was not expecting it for a Monday morning. They just scrimmaged on Saturday. Defense had dominated. I was expecting sort of a low key, not much energy day. Complete opposite. They weren't in pads, obviously. Again, they went hard on Saturday, but there was a bus tour for Michigan of just recruits, all recruits from Michigan that were there today. Saw a couple of Brunswick jackets, and I know there are other schools represented as well. But the one thing that stood out, and again, today aside, because today was different from other weekday practices, but Kenyatta Watson and a few other guys, a new GM, there's been a lot of one-on-one in terms of, talking with recruits and spending time with recruits. There's been less of them during the week, and I think that's important because they're getting more attention on the guys that they want and building that relationship more intimately than maybe if you do have 100 recruits there and they're all just sort of touring together. And you could probably speak to this better than I can, but just that one-on-one for a recruit is so much better than in a huge setting with a bunch of parents around and all that stuff. So I think their approach has been different. And I know we're going to get to the on-field stuff, but in terms of the way they're recruiting, it feels like they're going about things much differently and much more efficiently.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree. And I think that's where their front office comes into play.
Having a GM.
Having an assistant GM, because now these college programs are running like NFL programs. And so you have that front office structure. And in a lot of ways, those guys take a lot off of the head coach's plate. They take a lot of the recruiting aspect of the assistant coach's jobs away as well. They still have to go out on the road and recruit, but they handle a lot of the day-to-day communication with the recruits and setting up visits and setting up meetings and whatnot. So I think you're right. That's where Kenyatta Watson is paying dividends. You're seeing that, and I think you're going to see that at UMass. You're going to see that at UConn. Any program that has a general manager and a front office structure, it's going to look different now because now it's built like an NFL organization where it's top to bottom, and now you're going GM to head coach staff, and they worry about the on-field product, and then the GM and his staff worry about talent acquisition and supporting the coaching staff. So, yeah, I think that's a big reason why, and you would know, you've been there more than anybody the last few years. I think that's why it looks different because you have a general manager and that structure in place.
And just even from the one press conference you were at, you can hear it and see it in Bill's demeanor. Like, he's just so much more relaxed, and I think he's just more focused on football. I think you could generally feel it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I do. I think he is more focused on football, and that's why I'm glad he's running the offense because
he said it from the jump.
Right. A focused Bill O'Brien running the offense is good for Boston College football because when you're coming off the kind of season that they had, as a head coach, it's your natural inclination to just take over as many things as you can and put as many of your fingerprints on every aspect of the program as you can because you're in survival mode. And if you're going to win and you're going to turn things around, you're going to do it your way on your terms, and you're going to have as much of an impact on that as anybody. You'll have more of an impact on that as anybody. And so I think, in my view, I think you're right. I think he is having a good spring. I think Boston College is having a good spring. You can definitely see that he's relaxed and his demeanor is a lot different than it was during the season. Of course, again, they went through a horrible season last year, lost 10 games. But all that being said, I do think you do see a difference here because, again, I think the difference is he doesn't have to do everything now. He's got people that he can lean on and trust to do other aspects of his job as well.
Yeah, I just think, again, look at the staff he brought in. Like, it's an NFL staff, legitimately an NFL staff that knows what the hell they're doing. That's not a knock on, other coaches from last year who we got along with great, Tim Lewis, Matt Applebaum, Will Walling, but it's just everything about this season already looks and feels different. Yeah, it really does.
It does. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Of course, you have the chance on Saturday to visit with Harvard, and you got a chance to see Andrew Orrich's squad up close. Some initial impressions on the Crimson.
It's funny. I forgot I got to Harvard when you were saying that. I'm like, where did I go? It was a long day Saturday. No, look, the first thing that stood out to me was the offensive line. And we say this every year. Yes, the Ivy League kids, the teams, all recruit the same kind of kids. All the Ivy League teams have big offensive lines, but holy crap. This Harvard team has some mooses. But if you don't go down the roster, it's kids that are all 6'6", 6'5", 6'4", 320, 315. They've done a hell of a job rebuilding.
Are there any guys there that are 6'7"?
I see. You're too old for that. I'm too old for that.
And that has faded. So I shouldn't. I should stop saying it because it
I still know,
pretty friggin' annoying there for a long time.
I still don't know what it was, but offensive line is going to be a problem for everybody. In the Ivy League. Secondary looked good. Some kids that were fast, could cover well. Quarterback competition, you know this. We talked to Coach Ulrich, a couple weeks ago. There's 4 guys that are legitimately going to be in that thing throughout the entire fall. Honestly, like I could see that going right up until week 1. And then receivers kind of interesting too. They've had guys the past few years that kind of stood out as that number 1. I don't know if they have a number 1 right now. I talked to Brittany Blackburn, a veteran receiver for that team, who's probably going to be one of their 1 guys. But there's a lot of questions in terms of sort of who stands out offensively, but there's plenty of talent there. And you can see it. And then on both sides of the ball, again, that team is always good up front. So I feel like I say this with every spring visit, but they should be right there in the hunt for a league title again. There's no excuse.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I got a chance to visit with the Bryant Bulldogs on Saturday and a big junior day as well, big junior contingent down there. But they did practice indoors. Of course, it was a cold day, but I thought Chris Merritt's squad looked pretty good. You mentioned we talked to Coach Orich a few weeks ago. We also got a chance to speak with Coach Merritt at the New England Coaches Clinic at Gillette Stadium. And at that time, he told us he had 45 new faces in the program. And you see that. You see them trying to get guys acclimated. But, man, there's a lot of talent there. And they brought in a lot of the right guys. And you look at some of these positions, you're bringing back some guys that have been in the program, specifically quarterback Brennan Meyer, who's coming back from a collarbone injury. But they upgraded at running back. They added some size at receiver. When you look at them defensively, yes, you lose Michael Audie inside, and that's a big loss. But you got Nathan LaPlante coming back from Taunton. You've got some guys on the edge that can really get after the passer. And that secondary is going to be a strength. It's going to be a strength for Chris Merritt's squad. I think Coach Barisi's going to get a lot out of those guys. They've got some talent there, specifically at corner. So, this is a football team that has struggled the last couple of years with the move to the CAA. But I think that they've adjusted to life in the portal. I think they're bringing in guys that fit the academic and football profile at Bryant. Bryant's a great program. It sells itself. But I think you're going to start to see those results on the field now. Now, again, it's hard to build momentum when it comes to winning games because you're turning your roster over so much. But I do think, based on what I saw in my spring visit, this is a year where I think this Bryant program could really take some meaningful steps forward.
Well, they did last year, right? Like you had the first ever FBS win. I know it was UMass. And they had the first CAA win too. So they got a lot of the first out of the way. And if you remember right, we talked to Merritt last year, and he was just so sick of moving conferences. And like people don't really understand how much of a toll that takes on recruiting. You now have a permanent home. And I think they all just sort of feel more relaxed. We go back to BC feeling more relaxed. But that matters when you're trying to recruit kids in terms of being in a permanent place and sort of knowing what the future looks like instead of moving around every 2 or 3 years. So I just think that stability and the investment in the facilities is really going to help Bryant this year and moving forward.
100%. URI also kicked off spring practice on Saturday. They will continue with practice tomorrow. It's a big offseason for Jim Fleming's squad. They do graduate a lot of guys who were key contributors to their last 2 CAA titles. Guys like AJ Pena and Brock Bethea. Those guys are gone. But this is a football team that has a lot of talent. Devin Farrell's back at quarterback. Marquise Buchanan back at wide receiver. Case Mankins and Moses Muse on defense. You've got Andre DePina Gray back in the secondary. So this is a team that has a lot of experience coming back despite losing a lot of key guys like Pena and Bethea, guys who were big contributors to their championship success the last couple of years.
Yeah, look, back-to-back CAA titles, expectations remain high there. That's where they should be. Not playing at Meade Stadium this year, I am curious to see how the fans sort of get out and support that team because Meade was a legitimate home field advantage for them. So that's going to be interesting this year, how they sort of, they're not road warriors per se the entire year. Like it's on a 12-game slate on the road, but it kind of is. You know what I mean? So I'm curious to see how Fleming and that team approaches just the entire sort of oddity of this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, look, it'll be fun, if nothing else, that they're playing in Pawtucket, and it'll certainly, selfishly for me, it'll make it easier for me to get to go to games. So I'll be able to cover them a couple more times this season than I normally would, because, let's face it, for us, Charlie Adams, who's a URI guy, he does a lot of our URI games, but it'd be nice to be able to, I haven't been able to see the Rams up close and personal the last couple of years. So it would be nice to get to do that.
There's nothing like a Jim Fleming press conference in person.
No, Fleming is the best. He is the character of characters. UMass, of course, kicking off spring practice last week as well. Big spring for the Minutemen. Obviously, expectations are high. Joe Harris-Simiak and his staff did a really good job in the portal, bringing in some much-needed reinforcements. Of course, the biggest addition was Virginia Tech transfer and former Springfield Central standout William Pop Watson. The expectation is that he is going to win the starting quarterback job and be the guy, but you never know. Anything can happen. But I think provided he stays healthy, I think he establishes himself this spring, and I think he's named the starting quarterback either at the end of the spring or at the beginning of fall camp.
Look, it's just talk for now, but I love what Harris-Simiak said during his first press conference the other day. It was about a half hour, and we put a bunch of stuff that he set up on the website. Two things stood out. One about Pop Watson. He was asked by Howard Herman, who's one of the best out there in Western Mass. He was asked, is there a worry that Pop puts too much pressure on himself, being the guy coming back home? And he said, well, I looked him dead in the eye and said, we both have skin in this game now. And he said, then Pop looked at coach and said, I'm ready to go. So I love the confidence that Pop Watson has. And Harris-Simiak also said that, guys were walking around a mall out in Springfield and kids were stopping and taking pictures with them. UMass needs that. It's exactly what Harris-Simiak. And Harris-Simiak said
more. You said that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's so true that these guys are going to inject life into the program. The fact that they're local guys,
correct.
Paul Watson, Joe Griffin, that's huge. And they're not just any local guy. These were guys that had outstanding high school careers and went on to be FBS football players. So you need those positive vibes. You need that positive reinforcement. And I think adding those two guys was super, super smart. You're seeing it on defense too with Tyler Martin. Getting him to stay, keeping him around for another year. It matters. If you're UMass, you need those Massachusetts kids more than Boston College does. You really do. They impact you a lot more, especially if they're local enough like Watson and Griffin, if they're local enough that there's a connection to their area. And there's a UMass Springfield connection.
Yep.
And I think that that's huge for this program. And to your point, it's going to pay dividends off the field.
Yeah, no, Harris-Simiak's exact words were, we need mass, we need local. And so he knows it and gets it. So I do think those guys, I don't know if you can overstate how important they're going to be for the program. And then he said, look, we were the worst team in FBS last year since 2011, 2012. We have the hardest job in the country in terms of gaining respect back and turning things around. I just love the approach. Like his no-nonsense approach is exactly what they need. Now, it might not mean anything. Like they might go 0-12 again and get their asses kicked in every game, and he's, saying the same stuff. But if you just listen to tone and demeanor and watch the way that he kind of talks about his program, he was as pissed as anybody last year. And there's a genuine belief that they can turn things around by having the right kids in that new culture. So I love his approach as a coach. Again, it might not mean anything. It's just talk in April, but I feel like they're on the right path for now.
Yeah, and it is hard to believe. A lot of schools have started spring ball now for a few weeks. It's hard to believe that in a week from Saturday, Boston College and UConn will be wrapping up spring ball, which is crazy. And, of course, here comes the disclaimer. It'll be here before you know it. And, we'll be going on camp visits and people are like, shut up. It's what you're supposed to be doing. That's why you exist, so stop talking about it. So there you go. I thought I'd get that out of the way. Switching gears here now, talk some high school football, some coaching hires this week, starting here in Massachusetts. Lowell High School has a new head football coach. It is a familiar name, and it is Joseph Harris, who is a Lowell Hall of Famer. He takes over for Scott Boyle as a head football coach. Harris has been an assistant at Lowell for 3 different head coaches. He played there, is in their Hall of Fame. He was a hell of a player. Ended up playing at URI. He played FCS college football. Look, one of the things that matters when it comes to hiring the right coach is stability. If nothing else, I think James Harris gives a program like Lowell stability. This is a program that for a long time has had a lot of potential. They're in the MVC. We know it's a tough conference. We know they're D1, but that's a big school. And Scott Boyle led this team to a 9-2 record last year. They ended up losing to Springfield Central in the playoffs. This is a good job. This is a good program. Harris is inheriting a talented team. He has an opportunity to make a lot out of it.
You know how I feel about guys, returning to their alma maters, about and just what it means to them. I don't think you can replicate. Every head coach that takes a job is going to care about the program. Don't get me wrong, whether he went to the school or not. But there's something about a guy who played for and went to a school returning there that I think does wonders for the entire town. No matter what city or town it is, I just think there's something to guys caring more about that program and wanting it to succeed rather than someone that hasn't been there. You went back to Norwood, you know, this is, I'm trying to think. It's 2012, however long ago that was.
2010 was my first.
Yeah. So, but that meant something more to you. Sure, you care about King Philip now, but that meant something more to you going back to your old school. It's how it works. So I genuinely just believe that someone who was part of a program, they're not going to care more per se, but I guess they are going to care more per se about the future of that program. I love it for Lowell. That's a team that we've covered a bunch of spring scrimmages over the last few years, and they're always fun to watch, always fun to talk to. So I'm looking forward to covering them this spring and this summer. But again, I just keep going back to how important it is to have a guy that knows what it means to be in the program.
Oh yeah, it's vitally important, and I think again, that's where Joseph Harris is a terrific hire, and you know he'll do wonders for that program, being a guy that's from there. John Dobzinski, brand new head football coach at Central Catholic High School. We did touch on it last week. I think this is a great hire. You're getting a guy who's a Super Bowl winning coach. He comes from football royalty, the Dobzinski football family. If you were looking for a home run hire to replace John Sexton, I think you found one here in Coach Dobzinski. I think he's a terrific hire.
Winning coach for a winning program. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And he's inheriting a good football team at Central Catholic. They're going to be in the mix in the MVC, and they'll be a factor in Division I as well. So he's walking into a really, really good job. Another coach that's back into high school coaching after being away from it for a long time. He's a Fitchburg native, Mike Pucko, who made his name at Holy Name. He's back at in the high school ranks. He takes over at Fitchburg High School, a program that was really good under Ray Cosenza for years. They've really hit hard times over the last 20 years. But getting Coach Pucko back, who's a Fitchburg guy, is huge. Of course, he was a longtime college coach as well. He coached under Bob Chesney at Holy Cross. He's a legend in Central Massachusetts. But this is a tremendous hire for a Fitchburg program that really, really needs that. They need that uptick. They need to get kids back playing football. This is a big school. The hope is that Mike Pucko will do that.
It's funny. I think we talked about it last week when we found out it was open, and I was trying to think. And I wrote for the Metro West Daily News for 12 years, all of Central Mass. I never covered Fitchburg. Like, no one cared about the program. So to have a name like that take over, you mentioned he worked under Chesney, you can't get much better.
All right, I think we lost people. I hope we're not back on now as part of a second stream, and if we are, well, we apologize, but we did lose people there. As I mentioned earlier, we have had some technical difficulties tonight. It looks like we're back on, so we'll see. Anyway, nonetheless, I agree with you. I think it's a great hire. Frank Roach, new head coach at Belmont Hill, taking over for our good friend Anthony Fusillo. Of course, Coach Roach was the head coach at Arlington High School. He just makes a decision to leave Arlington, go Knapsack, coach at Belmont Hill. A really, really good hire for Belmont Hill, a program that, again, Coach Fusillo did a really nice job there, but they had some hard times last year. Roach is going to be tasked with turning it around, but this is a really strong hire for Belmont Hill.
I can't help it. Every time we talk about Coach Fusillo, I just think of Fusilli Jerry from Seinfeld, but it's every single time. Look, what he did in Arlington is not easy. It's a public school in a not easy conference. So to keep that team competitive the way he did for a few years was impressive. Belmont Hill, it's the ISL, so it's tougher competition, obviously. You're going to have to recruit kids, and that's not an easy thing to do, but I do think Frank has an ability to connect with kids, and he'll get that program. This is not a knock on Anthony Fusillo by any means, but he'll get that program righted. They just had a down year last year. I mean, they were a Knapsack Bowl champion 2 years ago. It's not like they've been down for 10, 15 years whatever it is. Coach Fusillo did a great job there. Just had a down year. I think Coach Roach can get things turned around pretty quickly.
Connecticut, a couple big programs made hires in Connecticut last week as well. Brookfield hiring Louis DiArcangelo as their new head football coach, a familiar name to Brookfield fans. And another familiar name, Steve Christie's back on the sidelines in Connecticut. He led Massac to a 2024 state title, retired after that game. Well, he's back. He took over at Fairfield Ward. This is a great hire for Fairfield Ward, a program that it has a lot of potential in Class LL to be a player, be a factor. You get a guy like Steve Christie in there who's won championships and has a championship pedigree. That's a great hire for that program. They obviously hope that he can get them going. And one other final tidbit, Isaiah Rogers, the standout running back at Springfield Central, committed to Notre Dame today. Huge pickup for Marcus Freeman and his program. I think this is a great landing spot for Rogers.
It's huge for Massachusetts football, too. He picked Notre Dame over Indiana, Penn State, and Georgia. Like, when do you hear Massachusetts? Well, I shouldn't say when do you hear. Maybe before the last decade. When did you hear Massachusetts kids having those four, in their selection? Just goes to show how much better the football is around here now, how much the talent just continues to churn out every year now. He's not the only kid, obviously, that we'll hear go into a big-name school. But it also speaks volumes about Springfield Central. They just keep pumping kids out, like left and right. Yep. It's crazy.
It is. All right, Stone, any final thoughts here? And we're on twice now, so apparently – the first show got interrupted. As I mentioned earlier, we had technical difficulties. This is a separate show. What I may end up doing is figuring out a way to just combine them and then reposting it as an entire show. So stay tuned. But final thoughts here. We got about 30 seconds left.
Well, I can't wait to hear you bitch about Restream tomorrow, and rightfully so, while you're doing this. But no, I'll be at Merrimack tomorrow morning, bright and early. This is their last practice before spring break, so it should be a good one. And again, the draft and OTAs are 3 weeks away. So stick with us.
Yeah, I got a couple of visits coming up. I'll be heading over to Brown at some point here in the next week. And I'm also hoping to get down to UConn this weekend and see Jason Candle and his squad. So keep following along with those spring visits. We got coaching hires. We got the NFL draft. We've got some interviews coming up with some of the local draft prospects as well. We got plenty of content coming up here ahead of the NFL draft over the course of the next 3 weeks. So make sure you're following along with anyfootballjournal.com. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. We will be back with you next week.